This channel supports Extra Life in its efforts to raise money for the Children's Miracle Network. For more information about how to donate and join in their efforts, go to the link displayed here. Extra Life. Play games, heal kids. What up, everybody? This your boy Black Magus, and just finished the second season of The Wire as I'm going through my whole re-watch of the series. Didn't stay up as late to watch this one, so I felt compelled to go ahead and record now. And I gotta say, I still think it was a solid season. Like, look, if you want to rank the seasons of The Wire, this would probably be ranked as the worst. Which is kind of hard. It's kind of like, you know, it's kind of like ranking what was the worst championship run of the Chicago Bulls for Michael Jordan. It's like that. It's just like you can't really shit on it much. Now I understand a lot of people shitted on it when it came out and said that they didn't like it, thought it was the worst, that it wasn't good, blah 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 blah. They took a step back. All right, here's the thing. It was told from a different perspective. It's a perspective that people probably weren't expecting or used to. The first season, we were basically all tied into the game from the perspective of how things worked in the hood versus how things worked opposite of the cops. In season two, you were taken out of the hood and you had to like look at another perspective, kind of, you know, not necessarily suburban white culture, because if you've ever been to Baltimore, Baltimore and Philadelphia share similar aesthetics as far as the row houses and things like that. So, from an aesthetic aspect, you pretty much had the same type of environment, but of course, it was mainly white people, and the stories revolved around the docks, and in particular, the docks union leader and his crew, and their involvement in illegal shit and how they were using that to try to keep themselves to survive. Meanwhile, you had people within the community, mainly the family members of the um, union leader, Frank Sabaka, his nephew Nico, and his son Ziggy, who started getting involved into like the street level shit, the like true crime, where Frank was letting stuff go on the docks for payment and not asking questions. They were getting mixed up and involved, stealing things, and eventually turning to like pushing drugs and stealing other stuff for them. Um, and they were mainly the main focus. Now, saying that, I don't think they were the main focus, and I think that's where people's anger always confused me, because you were never taken away from the story of the Barksdale saga. Um, the Barksdale saga had its play, and what the Barksdale saga did, what I think was, the thing that makes me like the second season, where people don't, is that it jump started you into what you were gonna get the next three seasons coming. To be quite honest, you got to see Avon being in jail and D'Angelo being in jail, and how both of their experiences were different, and how they were dealing with the situation. How Stringer, ultimately, if you really go back and look at the second season is where you finally truly realize that Stringer Bell is a fucking villain. The actions that he takes within the second season, he starts to progress more towards this, Stringer Bell, that by the time we got to season three, we were all like, "Fuck this motherfucker! Get him out of here." Um, and it's just things of that nature. By being involved with the saga of Frank Sabaka and his people, you also got to see where some of the drug connects laid, and how there were shadow people in the background, and how they proceeded, and just how differently the cops handled certain situations. When you looked at the environments, it had just as much discussion if you really wanted to pay attention and not just do what I think a lot of people do. And I hate to say this because I believe that with a lot of African Americans, the issue was they felt like they were taking the focus away from the black side of things, and they didn't want to see the white side of things. Um, I mean, that's just straight up what I've always believed. You know what I mean? um, which again I found ludicrous because you got like so much into the West Side stuff. You got to see the transition of roles, how people behave, like the maturation of Bodie and Poot. You know, again, Stringer Bell's like ascension to true villainy. You got to see some closure with some of the stuff that happened in season one, like Omar's testimony, which was a great diatribe on like how things work. Like if you are being pissy about the fact that it's not all focused on them, you're missing stuff like him breaking down how you know when Levy, the lawyer for Bell and them, tries to like cast him as this just like unscrupulous you know piece of shit that's just doing this just to get back at people. And he's like, yo, you talking about how I'm doing all this shit and like laying low with all these people, you're doing the same fucking thing. you know, just flipping it back on him. Just a lot of like crazy shit. And again, I was kind of interested in the Doc story too. I can't lie, because again, I'm not from Baltimore. I live in the DC area, so outside, but I'm sure there's a lot of people in the Baltimore area that could relate to you that yeah, that shit was um, you know, probably kind of like that. Because if you don't know, The Wire is based off of a lot of the stuff that David Simon and stories that they got during their time. I think David Simon was a reporter at the time. I can't remember if he was a reporter or a cop at the time, one or the other. But it was stories that he had heard, and he kind of had the situations and characters reflect people that he had heard of during his like time, in the career that he had during the 80s and 90s. So it's probably a lot more close to home for anyone who lives there. And maybe that's another thing. It's like that disconnect because Baltimore, I don't know how it is now, but it was considered a major port city in the United States. And that is a part of the city's tradition that is probably not as viable. And it kind of shows you how the effects of that had led to certain areas, like the area that they focused on, where Nick and Ziggy fucked around with, where you have these white drug dealers like running heroin within their community, because that became part of the city's fucking economy system, basically, because of the changes that have happened over the years to it. A lot of, and you see that in a lot of major cities. Like people always talk about how fucked up Detroit is, but part of that reason is that as automation took over within the automotive industry and things like that, and people moved their construction to more foreign facilities and so things like that. Detroit lost a huge like part of their economic um, backbone, and people had to turn to other measures, and it's kind of just slowly fucking degraded as time went along. You know, I think it's things like that people need to like sit back and just realize this is what they're showing you. It's like it isn't just things got fucked up just because nobody gave a fuck about the black areas. Things got fucked up because that city got fucked up, and of course, you know, we're minority communities are going to get the least attention and tear down faster. Whereas, you know, the white communities will feel the effects as well. It's not like they're going to be immune to it completely unless you're in the upper tier. Because it's funny because I remember like Nick saying like how he was making money doing the drug thing, hiding it from his girl. He was saying like, let's save up money and we could even get a place in the county. Those in another county, especially back at that time, was considered like the escape. It's just like where I live now. For a time when I was younger, everybody wanted to go to PG County because PG County is supposed to be better. That quickly faded, and then it was like as time went on, it's like you wanted to go further out into the counties in Maryland or into Virginia, and again, things kind of like degraded there too because the problems of life can't be escaped completely unless you're in that upper echelon, that 1%. You know what I mean? So I mean, I'm thinking now, if you're from the DC area, you understand this. Like Woodbridge, Virginia. Woodbridge, Virginia is a very nice place, very pretty, and it's also the place where the drug dealers and shit basically live, so they don't have to live within the places that they do their dirt. But it ain't necessarily a fucking safe haven, if you know what I mean. So it's just things like that. But I thought season two was cool. I love the setup. I love how it led, to the end where you got to them figuring out their next move when see um, Stringer and Prop Joe kind of solidify the deals that they made and things like that. Like it was a good season. It was like a nice different view to have. But that's just me. I honestly recommend people go back and watch season two again and just look at it from a different perspective. Don't look at it as this ain't, you know, the people from the first season. Just actually pay attention and listen. You'll realize that there's a lot of stuff going on there that totally relates to the whole journey that was The Wire. But anyway, as always, you guys feel free to hit me up. Let me know what you think, and I'll holler at you later. This your boy Black Vegas, and I'm out. Deuces.